enjoying getting to know our moderator of the series, Ms. CHARIS GOMEZ. She is the executive producer and the host of Living Local DMV. And she's amazing, and she is volunteering to host this whole series for us, and she's got a lot of sway, so she's bringing people into our doors. Thank you, CHARIS. And our first behind the scenes art career artist who's joining us, I'm really excited. She is the resident casting director at Shakespeare Theater Company. Her name is DANICA RODRIGUEZ. And when I talk to DANICA about casting, her vision is so beautiful. I can't wait for you to hear it, because I studied acting, and if I had you as a casting director, I might still be acting. So, without further ado, I welcome you both to the stage for an exciting conversation.
Well, welcome, DANICA.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
To talk to you, and welcome everyone. Been getting to know DANICA, and I'm so excited about this conversation. So what we are going to do is dive into your life and how it led you to your career path. So I want to start with the early days, especially. Tell me about little DANICA. Tell me about where you grew up, your mother, your father, your background, and your connection to the arts.
Absolutely. I was a theater kid from the very beginning. I had the great privilege of living in New York City, born and raised, and my parents were some of the most supportive, kind, incredible people in my life, and I owe everything to them. I grew up low income. I grew up as a Latina who lived in between Spanish Harlem and Yorkville, and I feel like that is symbolic of the way that my life trajectory went. I was kind of living in two different worlds at the same time. As I got into school, particularly preschool, I found myself already loving performing. It's strange, right? But when you're very little, you can see the kid playing drums in the corner. You see the kid who's really excited about kind of like playing pretend and dress up. And I was definitely one of those kids. My preschool teacher would always find me in the mirror making faces to myself. So I was cast as the Virgin Mary when I was 3 years old in our nativity play.
No pressure.
I mean, she's
no
a star.
Pressure.
And so from there, I was just so excited to be on stage and interact in that way. And I am most grateful for teachers. I have such a deep admiration for teachers who valued storytelling, who valued the voices of young people. And I was nurtured from preschool through high school by some of the most incredible teachers. My parents did everything they could to ensure that I had a really great education. I was full scholarship to all of the institutions that I attended. I ended up going into the private school system and being one of the only Latina kids there and one of the few low-income students. There is a divide between us, socioeconomically, but there is no divide in an art class. You are able to make together and collaborate and just be a part of something that you can leave everything else behind. It felt like escapism a little bit.
Absolutely.
And so it was just a wonderful experience. I played a latke in kindergarten. We sang If I Were a Latke to If I Were a Rich Man from Fiddler. A lot of lyric changes. And then as I got older, I did work after school. And I participated in programs that are very similar to Sitar. I would not be in the same place if I didn't have those after-school programs. If I didn't have access to different types of art forms to figure out what I loved and what I was excited about. I loved performing, I loved filmmaking, and I was able to pursue those wholeheartedly because of programs like this. And I really wish that there were more. So I'm here to support Sitar as much as possible and talk to you about where I've been.
Well, we're so lucky. We are so lucky. You mentioned being a low-income child. I want to ask about what was that impact like? I know the performing arts is the great unifier. Like no one knows your income when you're on the stage and you're in front of the lights. But sometimes as a child, you are reminded of your income. Like say, for instance, you don't have money for a field trip or, you know, things of that nature. When were you reminded of your income, and how did that relate to the performing arts? Was there anything, like, I know from my experience, I remember not affording an instrument or something along those lines. Do you remember ever, recognizing, oh, I don't have the same amount of money as another child?
It's interesting. Once you realize what that kind of underlying anxiety is, that underlying feeling is, and it's your socioeconomic status, it becomes so prevalent, and you recognize those patterns. But when you're little, it can come up in a variety of different ways. A lot of times in those like get to know you questions or kind of like get to know you games that we play in theater classes, a lot of times you'll be asked, what did you do over the summer? And that doesn't sound like a loaded question out of context.
Right.
But when you hear someone say, well, I was in the Hamptons. Well, I summered in England.
As a verb.
And I'm like, well, I kind of hung out on 96th Street for the entire summer. Or I had a job and everybody else didn't have to take on work over the summer. There is a difference. In terms of how that plays out in artistic spaces, sometimes it means you don't have the appropriate clothing. Sometimes it means you don't own tap shoes. So how do you take tap class? A lot of the times, it can be you're attending a program and you are given something on the side, right? Because it is a resource that you need and the program is giving you access to things. But other folks see it. And so you're automatically othered. Not on purpose.
Right.
It's not out of malice. In fact, it's the exact opposite by giving you the tools you need.
Right.
But it still feels different. And so I navigated that a lot. And as I got older, I got savvier at navigating it so that it looked like I could blend in. I like to dress quite nice. Thank you, everybody. But it is, thank you. But it is something that you learn how to dress rich. You learn how to blend in. You learn how to assimilate. And I can't say that isn't a part of how I got to where I was. But it is something that I deeply want to change. I don't want it to be that you have to assimilate to look like someone else, to look like you're a part of a different community, to matter and to be valuable. And so a lot of what my work is celebrating those differences, celebrating who you are and the journey you took to get here.
Authenticity.
Authenticity.
Love that. I love that.
So,
so important in everyday life, and especially, I'm sure, in your field.
Yes.
And speaking of your field, you start off as a Virgin Mary.
I did.
I don't know how to compete with that.
I mean.
But I want to ask, it sounded like you had an interest in acting at a young age and theater and performing on stage. When did you realize, you know what, I want to do something different from acting and go into casting? Or just tell me about how did little Danica end up to be Danica that we see today?
It's interesting. In high school, for senior year, the second semester, you are in the school that I went to, Little Red Elizabeth Irwin High School, go Knights. We were able to take on an artistic project or something that we were passionate in and do it for the entire semester. And so at that point, I had been a part of every school production. I was in both the musicals and the straight plays, found a deep love for it and a deep love of the process. But I started to realize by senior year, I don't think I like actually performing it. I love the rehearsal process. I loved auditions.
And how old were you when you realized the self-realization?
This was like 17, 18.
Oh my goodness. That's pretty good.
She's self-aware.
Yeah. Love her.
But I realized I didn't love it as much as I know that actors have to love this job. This job is so hard.
Right.
And it takes so much passion and it takes so much energy and there's so much rejection in this career path. And I realized very quickly that's not something I wanted. I'm also very aware of the actor's kind of financial situation. You'll hear about feast or famine a lot, right?
Yeah.
And that is very true. If you are working as an actor, you are making money. It is fabulous. It is wonderful. But when you're not, which there's only a certain number of roles and a certain number of stages or TV shows, you can be out of work for a very long time. And so growing up low income, there is a certain anxiety within me that I can't be without security. I know what it's like to be without. And I don't want to feel that again as an adult. So I needed to find something, a career path that allowed me to pursue my love of the arts, but also allowed me to feel safe. And so at 18, I didn't know that this existed. But I'm doing this project, and at this point, I think I'm going to be a writer. I started writing a television pilot, and thankfully, one of the parents at my school was Diana San, who is this incredible playwright. She wrote the play Stop Kiss and also works in TV a lot. She was guiding me through this process and showing me how to write a television pilot. I wasn't very good at writing a television pilot.
There's the self-awareness.
There's the self-awareness, very self-aware. But she showed me how that I was so invested in the characters. I was invested so much down to the number of freckles on their face.
Wow.
I was describing them. And she's the first person who told me what a casting director was. There is someone who can help guide directors to who can breathe life into these characters on the page. And that is what was most exciting to me.
Wow.
So after getting that tidbit and finishing my project, she got an A. I then decided I really want to pursue this. I need to get as much knowledge as possible. The thing about casting is there's no book on what we do. It is very hard to figure out what a casting director does because it's so mysterious. It's behind so many curtains. And if you're not working in the industry, you may not know what a casting director does. So in college, I delved into it as much as possible, found whatever literature I could, but then just started talking to people. I reached out, cold emails, sometimes they work. And you reach out to members of your community, of the theater community in New York. I ended up doing the first thesis about casting at Dartmouth College my senior year. It was focused on what the dynamics are in a casting room, the kind of power dynamics between actor and creator. And I wanted to investigate what it means to be someone of insert identity here. And be in what is often a very cold space, often a very anxiety-inducing space, often a very white-dominated space, and see how I could better advocate for them. So I wanted to switch that power dynamic. It was the most informative thing I did at college, and it is something that I carry to this day. The 12 actors who I interviewed for that project, I am so grateful for their generosity and kindness to a 22-year-old who was figuring it out, because I created a textbook for myself on how to do this. And it's really what has inspired the rest of my work.
So from that point, how did you turn this into a professional? Because it sounds like a professional role, a paying role.
Paying role, yes.
Because I know that was something important
yes,
to you.
Yes.
And something that was stable. Because I know sometimes when you're in college doing something and you're interning, you're gaining experience, let's just be real, you're not getting a lot of money for it. But you're already looking ahead, okay, when I'm 25, I want to be here. When I'm 35, I want to be here. So how did you turn this into a full-time career?
That's a very good question. So after that project, and even while in college, I started interning. I was very lucky that another parent at the high school that I attended was a casting director. He was the casting director for Seinfeld. And so, very cool, right?
Has everybody heard of that show?
He was a great guide. His name is Mark Hirschfeld. I'm incredibly grateful to him. He gave me my first job, and he took a risk, right? There's a little bit of risk in hiring a 20-year-old at that point to help you and assist you, and it was really learning the ropes via an internship. I am now in a place to tell students, if you're taking on internships, please get paid for them if you can. Do not do your labor for free. But at that point, that was what it was. That was the rule. So I started doing that. And from there, this industry is really connection-based, relationship-based. He knew another person who needed help. I started helping them. I ended up at Warner Brothers Television Casting in New York as their intern, working on like hot teen shows. So like Riverdale or Batwoman. Very cool, right? I don't think I was meant to hire the hot teens of the world. I think I wanted to get back to something that really felt like home and felt exciting and theatrical. So post-graduation, I had a lot of fears, right? Like I didn't know what I was gonna do. I knew that I wanted something secure. I'm not built for freelance. And a golden nugget of a job came up, and it was to work at the Public Theater in their casting department. And regional theaters can have resident casting directors. So it is a full-time position doing casting. It is becoming more rare as the theater landscape changes, but it is so incredible and so useful to have a career in the arts that is well supported by an institution. It allows for people like me with my background and my kind of experience to take on that work, and allows a space to carve out for people of color especially. So I joined the Public, and it was like going to grad school but getting paid for it. Not very much, but
Pay nonetheless.
Pay nonetheless. And I got to work on new plays with emerging directors and emerging writers and celebrate new voices, while also exploring the classical canon, getting back to Shakespeare and the Greeks, and figuring out how can I break this open for people who have never felt like this was accessible. Have never felt, oh, I feel really passionate about Shakespeare. Shakespeare's hard.
Absolutely.
If you don't understand that language, it's really hard to break into. But when you have storytellers actually connect with people, when you cast people who look like audiences, who look like the students who are learning the text, they feel connected. And so that's what was exciting to me. And I felt the Public really did that in a palpable way. And then pandemic hit. For theater workers in the audience, you know how rough that was. Our industry stopped. We couldn't gather. That is essential to our art form. But an artist in limitation can do so much. And I saw so many theater makers pivot. We figured out how to make theater over Zoom. We figured out how to blend filmmaking with theater so that we could remain employed and remain doing what we loved. And so we gathered, we organized. This was also a really important time for folks of color in theater. After the murder of George Floyd, it felt like we had the opportunity to wake people up because there is so much systemic racism in theater. Let me be very clear. It is not as progressive as people think. The arts can still be stuck in certain ways. And so being able to say, I'm not satisfied with that. You are not supporting my community. I need more. And demanding that of those who have held power for many, many years is incredibly important and has carved space for so many theater makers of color. We did that, we organized, community continued to build. And I found myself outgrowing my job at the Public. It was time for me to leave. And this wonderful job at Shakespeare Theater Company came to be, and I was connected to another casting director who had worked with them before. And again, relationships based. I was able to find other artists that I wanted to collaborate here in the DMV. And I found an artistic home, which is what I've always wanted. I place roots wherever I go, and I care about the communities I'm a part of.
It's amazing.
So that's how I got here.
I'm getting chill bumps. It's an amazing story. An absolutely amazing story. So you talk a lot about the importance of having people of color in theater, people of color in the performing arts.
Absolutely.
And one thing I think a lot of us focus on, because we're a part of the audience, is seeing those faces that look like us on the stage. But I want to ask you, and I think you've touched on it a little bit, but the importance of having those faces not only on stage or on screen, but also behind the scenes with your writers and your casting directors, because it's hard to have it on stage if behind the scenes isn't reflecting what people want to see on stage as well. So talk about the importance of being a woman of color as a casting director.
So I'll say this. You cannot cast away racism. It is not something that you will ever be able to do. There are a lot of shows and a lot of institutions that will put folks of color on our stages, but they will not feel supported in those rooms. It is a very surface level way to say, yes, we did it, check off, we hit the quota. I'm not interested in that. I am interested in ensuring that there are folks of color every step of the way in a process, because that means our actors are being taken care of. So in my role particularly, thank you. In my role, I am the first person an actor meets. And so I become the face of a company in many ways. I am a hiring manager. To put it in business terms, I'm a hiring manager.
Right.
So I need to be able to support the people coming in, ensuring that they feel safe, and ensuring that this creative team is going to maintain that safety throughout the entire process. I am also, because I have those identities, because I am a woman of color, because I am a Latina who has experienced so much in my life, you come with a different set of eyes. I am going to look at a play differently than someone who comes from a different background. I am going to look at a room differently because I know, okay, I see others from my community here.
Right.
I recognize you. I support you. It is different.
Mm-hmm.
It is not, I will say, most folks are not trying to be willfully ignorant. Mm-hmm. Most folks are not trying to be racist, or they just don't know the impact of some of the things that they're doing, the impact of their actions. Their intent can be good,
mm-hmm.
but without that knowledge base,
mm-hmm.
without that EDI training, they may not be ready to support us in the same way.
Right. Ignorance is just not knowing.
It's just not knowing.
Just not knowing.
Right?
Right. Right.
So having people who know
mm-hmm.
throughout that entire process ensures that we're doing things right.
Mm.
So it starts with me. It starts with my room.
Mm-hmm.
But then as a leader at Shakespeare Theater Company, as a leader in the DMV community, I am also trying to uplift other theater artists who are in more administrative roles, who are in more production roles. I believe as I keep rising up, and crossing my fingers, I do keep rising up.
Yes.
Yes. It is my responsibility to ensure that I extend my hand and bring my community with me. Mm. I tell anybody who's pursuing the arts, but especially those of color, you can't do it alone. Mm. It is your community that will get you there. Mm. And so make sure that you are holding on to them and supporting them and cheering them on. People are going to say your name in rooms that you don't even know. Mm. As long as you continue to approach with kindness and approach with passion, people are going to recognize that. Community supports community. Mm-hmm. And I've been blessed by it, and I hope to bless others with it too.
Yes, yes. Continue to be a blessing. Continue to be a blessing. This is like church. I'm like, yes. I was going to start. Amen. I'm like, let me compose myself. Let me be professional. So I want to ask you about the casting process in itself, because I know you're passionate about the casting process. So tell me how you go about the casting process.
Sure, let's take it step by step. We're doing a timeline.
Let's do it.
Okay. Very first thing we do is I get a script. Okay. I deep dive into this script. It is a part of my responsibility to be dramaturgically rigorous. Mm-hmm. I need to know this script like the back of my hand. I need to know these characters like they are my best friends, because that is the only way that I will truly know who should step into it. So it is rereads after rereads. It's notes and notes and notes. I'm a researcher. That is like the main thing that I do in my job, is research the piece that I'm working on. I can also research with others. When there's a dramaturg on board, I'm very excited to collaborate with them, because they have that knowledge base and have probably been working on it way before I even touched the script. Second step is talking to the director. We always have a pre-meeting. I need to know what the director's vision is, the themes they want to highlight, and we will go character by character and talk through what is important, what is the kind of arc of this story. And then, because I'm who I am and the process that I care about is highlighting folks of color, we'll talk about what cultural backgrounds fit this character, not what was traditionally done. I'm not always interested in that.
It's important.
Because theater was made for and by people who do not look like us. So how can we break this open for other communities? Who can take on this role? It is not colorblind casting. Right. I do not want to, we can't be colorblind, y'all. We can't.
It's impossible.
I can see you.
Right.
Theater is a visual medium.
Right.
But what I can do is cast consciously, can cast authentically, can tell a story via the design of the people on stage. And so I will have a very in-depth conversation with the director about that. We will make decisions. I write a little character breakdown. That gets sent out into the world. I do a variety of ways to reach out. I can send it via Breakdown Express, which is a software that actors can access via Actors Access. And that way they can submit themselves, or their agents and managers can submit them.
What are they submitting?
They are submitting
Headshots?
headshot resume.
Okay.
There is a program that I started at STC called STC All In, where actors can submit their material, so headshot, resume, and I ask them a few questions about themselves. And that becomes a part of my living database.
Gotcha.
So that I can see you immediately as I consider projects. Mm-hmm. Folks can just email me. If they see that there is a project that they are excited about, I make my email so accessible. It's on my website. It's on STC's website. Some casting directors like that anonymity, like that wall between actor and institution. That is not something I'm interested in, because that wall was built by folks who don't look like us. Mm-hmm. And maybe they're folks that have always had access and have never felt the kind of impenetrable nature of that.
Yeah.
So I create doors. I want to open those doors. So email me if you're excited about it. And then we will head into me building my big list. Every actor I've ever thought of for a role gets put on a list.
Nice.
I check avails, which means I will email you and say, hey, here are the dates. Are you around? Are you interested in auditioning? We'll go through an audition process, whether that is self-tapes of you recording yourself on like sides, a scene from the play, or you're coming to meet me for the first time or meet the director. And we do that for as many rounds as we need until a director feels secure in who they want to have in their play. Offer process, and then it gets passed along to other folks in the theater, and I don't do anything else.
You're like, my work here's
I'm like,
done.
I did it, we did it. It's been a process. This usually starts about 6 to 8 months before first rehearsal of the play.
Wow.
So I am always working on stuff that you won't even see.
Are you in 2025 already?
Mm-hmm.
Makes
Oh,
sense.
yeah.
Makes sense. You're living in the future.
I'm living in the future. So yeah, it's an exciting, it's a long process, but it's a great one.
I've never seen somebody so excited about their career, and I'm telling you, it's just infectious. I love it. I love meeting and talking to passionate people.
Oh, I'm so glad.
So one thing I want to ask, we're running low on time, and
Yeah.
I have like 45 more questions, but I want to open it up to the audience, of course.
Yeah.
But I want to ask, what is your advice to those listening? And also, I always say that you could also be talking to, there's someone's cousin, brother, nephew that they'll talk to after this event tonight. What is your advice to aspiring casting directors and actors?
Okay, I'm gonna split it up into 2 answers. For aspiring casting directors, this is a tricky job to get into, which we talked a little bit about. I would say check all the theaters in town's websites. They will have a staff member who definitely does casting in some capacity, whether it's a resident casting director like me or an artistic associate who also does the casting for that theater. There are folks who have jobs available, even if it's temporary, right? Even if it's just, hey, can you be an audition monitor for me for a day? Those little moments where you can get experience only open up further doors for you. So I would say, email those folks. What's the worst that happens? Either they say no or don't answer. And either way, it's just an email.
Yeah.
It will be okay. I would say if there are, if you're excited about actually making theater and want to try the casting process out for yourself, go to community theater. Go to your friends. Put on a play. You do not have to be in a professional space necessarily to do the work you want to do. Self-starters are always, we are grateful for them because you can build up your own experience without the approval of a big institution.
Right.
And because a lot of the times you won't have access to those institutions for a while. So try it out. Try it on for size. It can be a student play. It can be a play with friends. You can do it all. And it can be in a really low stakes process. I think it's important because you can get a little nervous. It's new. Try things out. Take a risk because it might really pay off. But yeah, just check the internet. Playbill.com always has jobs coming up. So I would say continue to check those kind of job boards too. not everyone needs an intense amount of experience for you to get started. So that's a process. You could also email me. Like, I sometimes have opportunities, and for students in the crowd, please get in contact with me. There are ways that I can connect with you and you can start getting little bits of experience. For actors, I would say having somewhere on the internet, have your email so that I can reach out to you. My job, again, as a hiring manager, I want to give you a job. So please let me be able to do that. I think it's great that when people are making videos themselves, yes, I look at your social media. Yes, I'm watching your TikToks. So please, feel free to be creatively engaged online because I get to know you through all of that. Do plays, do musicals, just start getting involved because this job, this industry is so community-based. Once you meet someone, they're gonna be like, hey, I can recommend this person. And it just continues. It's how I got to my position. So it's how you can get to yours in whatever theatrical job you want, but actors especially. You can go to school if you want. You can go to a program. STC has an academy for Shakespeare. I see some graduates in the audience. So there are other ways that you can get involved if you feel the academic path is what will drive you. But it's not necessarily the only path forward.
Amazing, amazing. We ran out of time.
I know, I talk so much, I'm loquacious.
It's perfect. No, you make my job so much easier.
Okay.
No, so I want to ask before we open it up to the audience, how can people follow you on social media? Or we'll have the opportunity to, I don't want to give your email address to the whole audience, but social media at least.
Social media.
Yeah.
You can find me at DANICA RODRIGUEZ Casting, no spaces, on Instagram.
Perfect. So at this time, we want to open it up to the audience. I know people have some questions about your amazing background.
Yeah.
So we will open it up. Everyone can, I believe there's going to be somebody who's walking around with a wireless microphone, and let us know what you want to ask DANICA. We have
folks in the front.
We have two up front.
Hi, my name is Indigo. I just had a primary question going back to when you're talking about your journey, through the internships and the jobs you did.
Yeah.
What would to you be the primary difference between film casting and theater casting? Because it seems that there might be a difference.
There is a massive difference. I would say first and foremost, it is the timeline. Film moves really quickly. And it is also typically more freelance based. So you could get a call being like, hey, I need a cast in 2 months. That is different from theater. Theater is everything moves at a slower pace. Everything starts much earlier. So it can be, again, 6 to 8 months ahead of when first rehearsal is. Television specifically can move in a second, which is why I don't think I was built for TV either.
It's a lot, girl.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. I know you know. But when I was working on sitcoms, we would have auditions the week they needed to go on.
Wow.
So it would be for smaller roles.
Right.
The leads are typically chosen way ahead of schedule, but every actor in there, the extras, those with a couple of lines, those are usually found like a week to 2 weeks.
Wow.
So those actors are on the go.
So the biggest difference is the time.
Yes.
Okay.
Also, the style of acting is different. Film is smaller. You can do an eyebrow raise and be like, whoa, that's too much.
Yeah.
But theater, you're talking to this big audience. You have to take up space. You have to make sure that the back row can see your expression. So it's a different style. I'm a big personality, so I find myself attracted to the stage. And I like working with actors and playing in this capacity. And final thing before we move on to the next question is that theater feels closer to the art form for me. I get to really engage with actors. I get to see that process through, talk to the director. TV, I would mostly be communicating with a producer. I may not even see the director that much. And I really wouldn't get to see the actors perform because that set's closed. And speed-wise, I'd be on something 40 projects ahead. So I really value that community that theater offers, and that's why I am so still connected to it and still pursue it. I hope that answers. Yeah.
So, at any time when you were in the midst of gathering names for a particular show. Have you ever walked into Whole Foods and looked at someone and said, that's not even knowing if that person's an actor, and saying, oh my God, that's the person I'm thinking of.
What a great question.
Oh
Have
my
you ever
goodness. At
scouted
the Whole
somebody?
Foods specifically. I would say that I am not typically scouting in that capacity. I have
It would be cool if
It
you
would be
did.
cool. It would be cool. Granted, I see a lot of actors in those spaces. I've seen tons of actors in town because I meet a lot of people all the time. In terms of scouting, the way that I would do that is I see tons of theater. I see theater maybe 3 to 5 times a week. So my job is, it's not just a 10 to 6. I'm often working from like 8 to 10 as well because I'm watching shows. That is when I get to see people perform. That is when I get to see how they do. I get to talk to the teams, being like, how is this dynamic in space? Casting directors in this town, we all know each other. We talk to each other. We have a group chat. So we are constantly exchanging actor information, being like, we saw this person in an audition. We saw this person on stage. We loved them. I don't have anything for this season, but I know that you do.
Yeah.
And we pass along actors' information, which is another way that we support each other, not only as casting directors, but also support the actors.
Yeah.
So scouting happens when I go see shows, not at the Whole Foods.
It's a really great question.
Great question, though.
Really great question. Any other questions from the audience? We have one right here.
Hi, my name is Wilbur. I just have one question. You said that before casting, you already had like an idea of like the character because you know they want your best friend and all that. But like, has an actor ever changed your like the perspective about that character as they're auditioning?
Absolutely. Actors are collaborators in space, whether they get the job or not. They can change a mind in a room. That's why I always tell actors, take your big swing. Do what feels good to you on that side. I'll tell you, I was helping with casting for the For Colored Girls revival at the Public Theater. For Colored Girls and Tasaki Shange, fabulous, fabulous, fabulous choreo poem. And we had a deaf actress, Alexandria Wales, take on the piece. And it is so beautiful to see a deaf actor work so hard on this language and blend not only ASL, but dance together. And after we saw that happen, we were like, that's it. That's the role. We didn't think that's where we were going. We had not anticipated having a deaf actor on stage, but it made the work even more beautiful. It expanded the communities that felt included in that choreo poem that talks so much about Black womanhood, and to have a Black woman who's a part of a community that doesn't necessarily get showcased on stage all the time felt extremely important in this revival. And so she absolutely changed our mind. And we were like, she's getting it. That's it. Let's figure out the paperwork.
Love it. Any other questions from the audience? All right.
How do you, you talk about inclusion, you're in an incredibly safe space, but there are so many young people who are in places where they are not allowed to be who they are. They're not allowed to even read books or plays. I'm from a state where somebody told me they cannot read the Diary of a Young Girl. And it brought me to tears. How do you see the future of theater when we see arts being minimized? This is an extraordinary place. How do you go beyond this microcosm so that what you're doing can be infectious? Because there's a lot of young actors out there, including my children, that space wasn't there. And they pivoted. They're still musicians, but they're not actors. They're not, they're not screenwriters and playwrights. How are you spreading what you have? Because we need it to be infectious throughout this country.
So increasing your reach.
I think that's an incredibly thought-provoking question. And I have that thought a lot in my work. I think it's important that, first and foremost, as theatrical institutions, we are working hard with our government to ensure that arts programs continue to move forward, that there is legislation that supports regional theaters particularly, Theater is always going to exist on the East and West Coasts. It's everywhere else that needs access. And so ensuring that there is funding nationally, federally, that can support teaching artists, that can support artists from these different areas, ensuring that grants continue so that people who are from different socioeconomic statuses have the ability to pursue the art form that they love and be financially supported. That is number one. Number two, there is a responsibility from especially regional theaters or regional theater companies to support the community that they are in. It often is the case that there are theaters that want to only create for their donor base or create for the audiences that have always been there for them instead of the audiences that are here in this city, particularly the DMV.
Wow.
So I think, one, it is supporting playwrights and directors, especially of color, queer playwrights and directors, disabled directors and playwrights, so that their stories are supported and they're getting paid and supported by the institutions that have that backing. It means creating nights where people are just invited. They don't have to pay necessarily. That paywall can be broken down. There are culturally specific nights where there might be lowered rates, but that it is especially for a certain group. I just did the casting for the sensational Seaman Ketts at Woolly Mammoth.
They came on the show. Love them.
I love them so much. I think you had Kalia on.
Yeah.
We had a blackout night, which means that you had to be Black identifying to be able to sit in the audience. And it is just such a different space when a story about an HBCU is being told and it is about the Black folks who are watching, right? There were so many Howard students in there. Right. They're getting the references. They're doing all that. So that is really necessary. When it comes to Shakespeare, when it comes to the classical canon, being able to go to the communities. If they can't make it to the theater, you go to them. You have to do it in a responsible way because you don't want to be just the white institution that is coming here and telling you what art is. That's not okay. But what you can do is invite them and go to cultural centers that are already have a community built and offer something. It's not a demand, it's an offering. And inviting them into those spaces, especially young people. Most folks get into the arts because they have a memory of when they were little, of loving a play, of seeing an actor that they wanted to emulate. I was 5 years old when I saw Little Shop of Horrors, and it changed my life. So I think that's extremely important. And places like Sitar. You need to have teaching artists, people who believe in young people, who believe in their growth, and are supporting it in such incredible ways. Because that is opening up doors. That is, you are supporting someone from a very young age all the way until they're fully grown, and you are instilling the values needed to help our country change, to ensure that the arts are supported. Everything starts when you're little. And so I find theater education and arts education essential to ensuring that we continue to have these programs. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes. Amazing, amazing. Honestly, I hope that I know I'm walking away with the importance of community, of self-awareness. Little Danica is my favorite ever. The importance of self-awareness, passion-driven living, equality of the arts accessibility. Yeah. And I think most importantly, I'm walking away with the importance of supporting the arts accessibility. So thank you so much for sharing your story. We could sit here and talk all night, but I think people do need to go home to their families.
I get that.
But we can be here all night. They'll turn the lights out on us. But I wanted to open it up, honestly, to the audience to open up a QR code on the back of your program. And if you could, please, we greatly appreciate it if you would do a quick survey right now on what you took away from the evening, what we could do better next time. I don't think we could do any better than, we'll just have you every night. No, yes. I mean that. So if everyone could take out your program and just quickly fill out that QR code on the back of your program, we would greatly appreciate it. The next Artists at Works event will happen in April, so please stay tuned to that. Please follow Sitar on social media. And also, we have to follow you. Like, again, give your social media.
At DANICA RODRIGUEZ Casting on Instagram, or you can go to my website, DANICARodriguez.com.
And you already have your phones out, so follow Danica. And I want to invite everybody to a wonderful reception after.
Yeah.
So we can talk to Danica. Ask her more questions than I ask, because I have like 4. Like I said, I have all these things to ask you, but I want to actually open it up to everyone so they can ask you one-on-one. But thank you so much for your time, sharing your incredible story. I can't wait to learn more and follow your story. I want to get into acting now, and I want you to be my casting director. So if you see me, I'm gonna have
Listen, Charisse, come on down.
Look, I'll put a mustache on and glasses like I'm Chris Gomez with an S. With an S. Like,
I'll keep an eye out for Chris.
Yeah. Keep an eye out for Chris. But thank you again. And again, open up that QR code. Please let us know what you thought of tonight's event. And we will see you afterwards for the reception, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.